All right, so hello officially, everybody. Thanks for joining today. This is the New Mexico Compost Coalition, and my name is Isabel Jeniches with the New Mexico Healthy Soil Working Group. I'm really happy to see you all here, and we have a really interesting topic today, which is biochar. And we have James and Joyce Skeet from Spirit Farm do a little presentation for us because they have really great things to share about biochar. And then we'll have a conversation about that. So I was wanting to do a quick round of introductions just to see who's in the room, and maybe you could just say your name and association and what your interest is in biochar, and maybe also what your level of knowledge is. So that might be helpful to James and Joyce in shaping what they will share with us. So let's maybe go around the room and see who's here. Steve, why don't you start?
I'm Steve Glass, and I'm with Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District here in the Albuquerque Rio Rancho area, and I'm a long-time composter, and I guess that's enough. That's enough.
And what is your interest in biochar or your level of knowledge?
My level of knowledge in biochar is probably about a 4 out of 10. I have seen Peter's biochar demonstration. I've done a little bit of reading about biochar. So yeah, about 40%, I'd say.
So no,
my interest, of course, is you know, we at the Conservation District are always looking ways to improve the soil. And so if biochar can help with that, I want to know about it.
Awesome, thank you. Well, John, please go next.
Hi, everybody. John Zarola. I'm a Bernalillo County Extension Master Composter. We work in Bernalillo County and Sandoval County. I've been adding charcoal to my composting operations for a couple years now, and I let it get inoculated in the compost pile. And then when I sift the compost, I take the biochar out because it's not charcoal anymore. It's biochar in my estimation. And then I use that as an inoculant in my new pile. So that's my experience with biochar.
Very cool. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Right. Jennifer, please go next.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Paris. I'm in Taos County, and I'm working with solid waste in Taos County. And I wrote a grant for composting in the county to get it going, and we were not successful, but but I learned a lot.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Right. And they're not quite ready, so that's okay. And I also work with the Taos County Economic Development Corporation, TCEDC, for beginning farmers and ranchers with climate smart techniques to start ranching. So that's our 3-year goal. And so I just get really excited about regenerative ag and learning about all these things. In terms of biochar, I'm maybe a 2 on it, and just looking forward to getting to know more about it. And I plan to take the composting facility management class in November that NMED is offering. So just keep learning, and with the aim of writing a successful grant so we could get some composting going in Taos County.
Keep at it, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Josh Waybright. I'm a soil food web lab technician in Santa Fe. And my interest in biochar is the microbial component. We hear about it being a housing for microbes, but there's also talk about maybe being a possible food source for microbes, specifically purple non-sulfur bacteria. So I'm definitely interested in that. I think I've got a pretty good handle on biochars making. I've made some, I've used it, and just got the Kelpie Williams new book, which is supposed to be really good. I haven't cracked it open yet, but a lot of my associates are giving it praises. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay. Donald, please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Don Jaramillo. I am with the Gallup and Grants Pantry. I'm about as rookie as it gets in regard to biochar and composting. Actually, I've never composted, but the city of Grants recently acquired a piece of property to where we're expanding the Grants Pantry, which will include a community garden, hope garden, and which will include composting. So my interest just I'm trying to get tidbits here and there, and I'm excited to of what we're looking at in the future as far as expansion at the pantry.
Did you say you were with Galloping Goats?
Gallup and Grants. Grants is 60 miles east of Gallup, and the Grants Pantry is a sister of the Gallup Pantry.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. Of course, that's great. Well, welcome and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Laura, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Laura. I'm based in Santa Fe. I have a lot of experience making charcoal, but more for like small scale cooking in villages. So I have a lot of hands-on experience with different charcoal making methods, and I'd like to transition to using it more in soil. I have zero experience with using it in soil at this point, but a lot of abstract knowledge. So I'm curious to hear about this farm's experience with using it.
Exactly, the applicable pieces. Thank you so much. Joyce will get to you later. And then next on my screen is CJ.
Hi. Can you tell me what we are introducing?
Oh, I'm sorry. So we
No,
are
I was
just
late.
it's all good. I should have repeated it, but we're just introducing ourselves, your name, your affiliation, and then your level of knowledge, experience with biochar, or maybe some questions that you have or one.
Oh, awesome. Okay, thanks. Yeah, my name's CJ. I am a new employee at Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District. And I have done some, I would call it thorough research and writing on practical biochar use and like making and applications for the Southwest. And I'm way more interested in not the research and like really excited to hear about what has happened for folks using biochar on soil in New Mexico. Yeah, I think that's it. Thanks, Isabel.
Great. I think you'll learn something that satisfies that desire today. Thanks for joining. And Sandra.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sandra West, the Sustainable Waste Specialist in the Sustainability Office at the City of Albuquerque. I have a lot more composting knowledge than biochar specific. Basically, my biochar knowledge is like book knowledge. I am excited to expand that to be able to understand, especially New Mexico specific, as CJ was talking about, and having more like experience stuff. I also think that biochar is a very important component for lands in New Mexico, including in the city of Albuquerque area in the future. And so I'm curious. I'm always wanting to know how things are going, what's working well, so that I can integrate that into options for the city. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sandra. Amy, please go ahead.
Sorry, a really loud truck just drove by. My name's Amy. I work with the Quivira Coalition. And let's see, we have been doing kind of biochar workshops and applications of biochar in rangelands among the Southwest, so New Mexico, possibly other areas as well, also Texas. I'm going to drop in the chat a guide that actually CJ co-authored. I hope that's okay, CJ. I shared this before, but for those maybe who haven't been here, we do put out some information about biochar. But yeah, I'm here to learn as well, like how folks use it, apply it, you know, and just help contribute to the conversation.
Thank you. And I'll make sure to link to that wonderful resource on YouTube as well, because it's great to have. Hey, Rob, please go ahead. You're next on my screen.
Hi, my name is Rob Hirsch. I'm the co-founder of the New Mexico Healthy Soil Working Group and the executive director of the Climate Change Leadership Institute. And I don't have that much knowledge or experience with biochar, but I'm attending the call to learn more about it, and very much interested also in composting and statewide support for composting, as well as local composting, of course. So I'm happy to see you all and learn from you today, but unfortunately I have to get off in a little while because I have to pick up my son at school, but I can listen to the recording. But thank you for everyone being here. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Rob. And is there something that you needed to share before you hop off, or
Not at this time, I'm good.
Okay, just making sure. Great, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
All right, well, with that, I'll hand it over to James and Joyce to introduce themselves and to take us on a little journey with biochar. Enjoy.
Wonderful, thanks everybody. Good to see some familiar faces, and coming across the whole state of New Mexico. In Navajo we call it Hahozte, which just means a drawn line across. My clan is the Red Cheek clan, my maternal side, and then my dad's side is Leaning Tower, which is more of a diplomatic, whereas the Red Cheek clan is in constant conflict, wanting to go out and fight people. So hopefully, that'll balance itself out in this presentation. But I'll let my wife Joyce introduce herself, if that's okay, Joyce.
My name is Joyce Skeet. Yeah, I've been here on the land on the farm here for 8-9 years, and we've been really incorporating biochar the last 2 years. And I'm sure you'll hear from James. Took a while to sell me on biochar and making it, but once he did, I was really sold, and been doing a lot of experiments both with a microscope and different applications in the garden, and working on different things right now with the fields, and been hearing little people's little input on some of their experiences. So yeah, really looking forward also to hearing what some others have done too.
Okay, we got to figure out how to share screen.
Yeah, you should be able to just do it. You have permission, at least.
Okay.
Under the share button.
Okie dokie. So we started this farm 10 years ago just as an experiment to heal ourselves. And in that process, I think we've really expanded into a number of different research aspects of the farm. And okay, here we go. And in that time frame, we've been able to regenerate the soil from can you all see that now?
Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful.
It's just not in presentation mode quite yet.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okie dokie. So there's a couple words that I've introduced to the idea of regeneration One of them is indigenous regenerative intelligence, which was really needed in the process of how we're presenting ourselves to a larger community, as well as maintaining that contextual indigenous perspective. Biochar, life and what it does at the beginning of time, the earth being built, was really the process of what nature did. And the word I really felt needed to be put into our conversation has been the biocosmology. Bio meaning life, and the cosmology is sort of the layers, like you see in the onion layers of how indigenous people bring outside information in and make it their own, and then from there they propagate it. So it's kind of a reciprocity of a process of thinking, of living, of breathing, of dancing, of worship, of connecting with the earth itself. In that connection, there's really a strong push to keep the spiritual ethics intact. So the biocosmology incorporates that. And part of that has been, how do we incorporate biochar into that discussion? Okay, I'm trying to move it forward, and there we go. So how can we talk about biochar and explain it to the ordinary person? What exactly is it? Is it charcoal, or is it a particular kind of charcoal? What is biochar good for, and what are some of the uses? So at a nano level, move my little slide over here over so I can read this. On a nano level, this is about more than just a manufacturing process to make a product, which has really been the commoditization of biochar and the heat aspect of it. We don't want to go down that path because that's very European, very extractive, very colonial. It is also about an alteration in the energy and the material fluxes of the environment, a planetary energy and carbon balance. It's really peering into the complexity of the most basic of nature's cosmology, the nano level. So if you think about it, what our sages did was they meditated. And when in that meditation, it was really a transition that they were moving into from this sort of top surface of the earth, going back down into the origins of the earth. And in that meditation, what you're doing is you're connecting with what energy was there at the beginning of time. And it was water, fire, maybe some materials there that were burning. And so in that burning process, what it did was it created an environment where the biology can come in and begin to grow. In this meditation, that's this kind of, you're transcending time and space, looking at the beginning of the earth and how our medicine people really look at it, sort of leaving not only a pathway of enlightenment, but really looking at humility. It's kind of a metaphysical state of being that awakens the connection and concentric perspective of nature and all living and non-living things. And the movement is towards honor and not just humility, but to honor and consider things sacred. In the colonization, the education, the things that have come from Europe, the European industrial rollout, this is missing, this idea of this sacred space that we need to move back into. Indigenous cultures in the Western Hemisphere have been using biochar for over 40,000 years in their agricultural soil. They inoculated the soil. They built the soil. They used things from their own system, defecation, urination. And if you look at the Black landscape there in South America, what you sense is that they influence in the direction of which nature can go so that they can produce these large populations of people existing in this Western Hemisphere. There's still a lot of discussions about that from an anthropological perspective. there's discussion that did they really have the load capacity, and how do they maintain that load capacity? My thinking is that they were using biochar for that. So biochar, let me move my little, let me collapse it maybe. Okay. So the biochar development did not carry the usefulness into agricultural production until now, again, mainly because of the pandemic. Those microbial hitchhikers that came with European influence into with the Spaniards and with the different colonizing settlers that came in. So what we have is a large proportion of information that was lost, because when the settlers came in, they saw this really pristine, almost Eden perspective. And what it was the annihilation of 90% of the populations on this land. So when you have a population that's reduced on that level, what you're gonna lose is ancient knowledge, ancient pathways into understanding how they maintain such a large population, how they heal themselves, how they lived in these environments. So in order for us to understand that, we have to go back to 1491 and pass. The complexity of large people groups sustain and maintain large cities, populations in this Western Hemisphere. So that's what leads us to the idea of biochar. You see kind of on a nano level, all these little compartments. And all these little compartments will channel us back to the origins of the earth. These little compartments have certain charges in them that draw fungi, the microbial species all move in there, because what they're doing is it's their communication and their transportation is really based on energy, whether it be positive or negative. It's energy that draws them into these spaces. And once they draw into the spaces, then they start moving in and plastering the walls with their poop, whatever they have, and then it charges it up. Biochar in itself is very sterile. You can actually eat it if you have an upset stomach, a lot of acid in your gut. Just eat the biochar, and what it does is it'll kind of get that pH level in your gut back working together. So in this nano level is really energy, and what we're now missing is the idea of how do we culturally connect, not just to the energy, but have this kind of reciprocity going on with nature. So you'll see some of these nano level. By the way, Kelpie is a good friend of mine. So I said, hey, can I steal some of your stuff, Kelpie? She said, oh, go ahead and use it, James. So this is organic biochar on the right here, and then the organic material, the coating that takes place. It produces sort of this surface layer that has to be charged up after the pyrolysis, and I'll explain that a little bit more. So I heard Rob saying something about climate issues and climate thing. Our modern world, everybody knows we're on a bad trajectory. We're looking at extinction, further imbalance, and we need solutions to create this framework. We have too much carbon in a different area than needs to be. It needs to be in the soil. Carbon is not a pollutant. We're all made of carbon. Consume too much carbon from the living biosphere, including soil, to the atmosphere by conventional farming. And I tell a lot of our native farmers that when you plow, what you're doing is you're releasing a lot of carbon into the atmosphere. We just have a dislocation of carbon. We have too much in the atmosphere, not enough on farmland. And this fixed carbon is a very interesting, stable carbon. And whenever you make biochar, you're creating this really answer to the carbon problem. If you have a Prius or electric car, you're just prolonging the climate. You're not answering the question of how you can mitigate it and change it to where you're putting carbon back into the soil. Sort of just mimicking nature and coming back into this humility and understanding indigenous perspectives is really, really important in this climate crisis that we're in. And for me, it's not a climate crisis. It's actually an opportunity for us to take some of this ancient knowledge that's been marginalized back into its initial framework, which should be a part of our ethics and a part of our humility. The carbon's now imbalanced, like we said, sort of a biosystem on all levels of stress. Some places the atmosphere have too much, other places in soil have too little. Biochar can correct this carbon cycle in a way that benefits people and nature. Biochar repairs carbon by taking it out of the atmosphere and putting it back into the soil. The one thing we're not talking about in soil mitigation or soil science is the idea of liquid carbon inside plants. Instead, we're talking about fixed carbons. This liquid carbon is in plants and the roots. So whenever you have any plant growing in a soil that's rooted in, it's really a liquid carbon that it's creating and then putting it back into the soil. Restoring carbon has another meaning too. The transformation organic carbon creates by plants of what I call this kind of cycle. It's my mom used to say, you know, plants is the mouth of the earth. They're reaching out to heal us. Organic carbon is now a mineral form and fused carbon rings that microbes cannot easily break apart and consume. So this is kind of the idea that when you fix the very basis and establish the foundation of biochar, then the microbes and the fungi work off of that good foundation. You can organically compost for a long time, but you'll never get to that state in your soil. It'll eventually deteriorate or break down. Organic material always breaks down. But if you have biochar, it's, 1,000 years half-life, which I tell indigenous people, you're looking at 7th generation down, maybe even more. If you're fixing the soil and the land with biochar, putting it in there, what you're doing is you're doing it for your grandkids. This is how biochar fixes climate, by preventing the microbes from turning solid carbon back into CO2 gases. Consequently, biochar is stable and has a half-life of 1,000. That's just blows my mind. And that's one of the reasons why I need to repeat it. So these are some of the benefits. You guys are wondering how does biochar benefit? It restores drought condition by holding water in soil. It's a water sink. It holds water, and we're seeing that in our early growth. We're seeing that the issue right now is how do we get it out on a larger scale, and that's some of the discussion I'm having with conservationists. How do we get biochar on a larger scale? Biochar fixes fertilizer storage by holding nutrients in the soil. Biochar restores dead soil by improving conditions for beneficial soil microbes. For them, somebody mentioned low apartment buildings. Biochar fixes smelly manure. And I want to say this, there's a lot of people that get food thrown away and they're using it and it stinks. If only they would use biochar and mixing up in the compost, it'll lower the smell. I cannot tell you how important that is if you have a pig farm, sheep farm, cattle ranch. We have put biochar into our pens, and they walk on it, they defecate, they poop on it. We even feed our animals biochar so we can get it on a larger, when they're out grazing. Biochar restores polluted soils by immobilizing heavy metals and other contaminants. And that's some of the study that Nicole Master is doing is she's looking at what kind of weeds grow and what are some of the weeds that help pull out those heavy metals. But if you put biochar in there, it'll do the same thing. It's a type of emulsifier. It just attracts those kind of hard pollutants. Biochar fixes flooding by improving rainwater infiltration. We've had a lot of problems when we've had to either do our starts or grow something. It just seems like the water just evaporates really, really quickly, or when they flood the fields. Why not use biochar on your land so that it can hold on to that water? Biochar repairs eutrophication. Eutrophication is something that we were talking to some of the people up in Seattle, the San Juan Mountains, Whidbey Islands. And I was showing them a little bit of some filtration of septic tanks, septic going in and septic coming out. And just really the discussion of, getting too much algae into the water system. And we've also talked to some of the tribes about using biochar sort of like roles along the farming that they do with the sea creatures, the clams, and purifying the water as they're sitting there as they collect and farm a lot of these shellfishes. Biochar fixes building materials, and they're using a lot of that for insulation as well as building buildings and things like that, because it's a really good structure. Biochar fixes human health and well-being. When you add, to your diet too, it helps clean it out. And that's one of the reasons for feeding our animals biochar along with fermenting grains and things like that we do here on the farm. We're researching 2 different pens, one without biochar and one with biochar. And we're finding in our research that the ones that have biochar hold the weight more. They're heavier as we weighed them. Biochar fixes animal health when it's used in feed supplements and for manure management and sanitation. Biochar also fixes forest fires by converting, and this is something that Native people have been doing for years. On the Bosque, I could not believe, we did a presentation to some of the tribes along there. I could not believe the amount of biomass that was on the surface. It's ready for a huge mega fire. And I was telling them, why can't you make biochar with this biomass and then begin to apply it on your composting or, using it for water filtration. So in a way, biochar fixes things and it fixes our climate problem. It fixes a variety of other environmental and health problems. To biochar is to fix carbon drawn from the atmosphere through plants, photosynthesis, like I said, with liquid carbon, and puts it back into the earth. Our biggest problem is not too much carbon in the atmosphere. There's not enough carbon in the soil. And that's the discussion that we need to have. How can we get carbon back into the soil? I think we're complaining too much about it being in the atmosphere. We need to rebuild the soil. We need to rebuild the biotic pump, the water pump. We need to get those right cation charges going on with the hydrogen molecules. And that's a whole nother story with water systems too. This is a little picture of how the microbes pop in and how they sit and eat, and electricity, water, food. How do we use biochar? We pre-treat it, whether it outside in the air and rain, add to animal barns. You can actually add it to anaerobic fermentation, bokashi, as well as the Johnson Sioux and the Elaine Ingham bioreactor, which is kind of what we've done. We soak liquid fertilizers such as urine and manure tea. Joyce has been doing actually adding fulvic and humic acid into the biochar and then getting it out into the fields. So once you get beyond 20%, what you get is not a whole lot of upward curve. It just plateaus out. So about 5 to 20% added to per volume with what you're doing in soil. Band and row below seeding, it's another way to do that. Spread layers 1/2 inch thick on bed surface and scratch it in. That's another way. But you got to remember that if it's straight biochar, when it's not inoculated and not charged up, what you'll have is a year of a whole lot of nothing. In the following year, you'll see that a lot of growth will take place. How do we apply biochar? Apply plain weathered biochar legume crops. Apply as biochar compost or vermicompost. And there's some really neat stuff. I'm working on some vermicomposting with the biochar, and it's amazing because that's heavily fungal in its approach to the microbes. Apply mix with organic fertilizers and minerals in planting holes or seed rows. Apply liquid biochar, fine powdered, ground up, mixed with some of the teas. You can then spray it out. That's another way to get on large scales. So what you're doing is you're creating these aggregates in the soil, and anytime you add little pockets of airspace, you get a lot of momentum of microbes coming in, and these soil aggregates are really incredible stuff, and biochar enhances that. And I think there needs to be studies done with flooding, because a lot of flooding brings a lot of really fine materials, and it's usually clay, and you almost need what do you call it, plow, a deep plow to break the soil up, which I think is kind of working backwards, but I'll move on that. So these are the soil grains. Microbes love biochar. It's stable, degrades over time. Soil life binds particulars into the aggregates. Water and nutrients are held in the soil. Plant roots are happy. So this section is really about what you got to do a pyrolysis, which is fire analysis is the separation of that. Now, charcoal, it still has some organic material in there. In this char, when you burn it, when it gets really, really hot, there's a process to pyrolyze it, which is to quench it. This is one of the Kelpie's fire rings, and it's what do they call it, Joyce? Top flame. Flame cap, or I forget the name of it. There's a lot of
flame cap.
Yeah. So what it does is there's some space around the outer ring, and the air flows up and it caps down from the top. Whenever you're doing biochar, which is kind of not what the Forest Service is doing, they're burning from the bottom up. What you need to do is burn from the top down to create. So this is almost at a stage where it's ready to quench. This is at a stage where it's ready to quench. And when you quench this, you're pyrolyzing it, separating it. And then, excuse me, what you have then is that biochar, the spacing and things like that. This is an example of some of the things that we've been doing with the plants. The control, the biomass, the secondary, different things, composting char. And can you talk a little bit about that, Joyce?
Yeah, so we add 20-30% biochar into our soil seed start mix. And what we're finding is our seeds are sprouting in half the amount of time. Then we will also, when we transplant the seedlings, we will take a tablespoonful of seedlings and we just throw it into the hole where we're transplanting. And we've noticed that the ones with biochar just really take off a lot quicker, and they grow a lot quicker till it's a adult ready to eat stage.
We've had some girls out of I almost said China, Zuni. They've been growing, trying to grow under Zuni soil, and we shared a lot of our composting. They bought some composting from us that's biochar. Now you have to realize it took a long time for me to convince my wife that biochar is the way to go, because we've seen that happen in my ancient days, you know, burning that they did. That's one concept of burning that the tribes, the Plains tribes, used to do, and they were looking at the cation exchange. If you have really good soil, it's about 9 or 10 cation exchange, drawing a lot of the microbes into the char. They did a study on the plains area where there was really good soil, and the tribes used to burn a lot of the grasses there. And they found 21 cation exchange. And then they did a study down in South America, and it was 225 cation exchange. And that is really, really incredible, to the point that the compost itself keeps growing.
Our staff here that help do a lot of the seedlings and stuff, they're so sold on it because they see the results. So every time they get ready to start their own seeds or plant at home, they come and ask for the biochar. So, you know, it's just, you see immediate results on it.
This is some of my pigs that have been eating biochar, also feeding on cover crops that I've done with biochar in the fields. And that's amaranth there, and some of the things that just really gets robust. There's another area that we did a study on that we looked at cover crops and arterial sheep, which is a whole nother study of regenerative livestock that we need to move into. The biocrust is very fragile in our area. So adding biochar and compost into this area, you see how robust the land got. And on the right side, you see over the fence, that's all sage, and it's barren soil. And usually sage is a sign of overgrazing. Whereas here you get this process going. I guess I'm going to stop there. And any questions?
Thank you, James and Joyce. Do you want to just maybe get out of the slideshow so we can see?
Yep.
You? Thank you.
How's that?
Awesome. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I want to invite everybody to chime in with comments, with thoughts, with questions. That was terrific.
Thank you.
That was really great. The first question that came to mind is, I'm wondering what the most difficult part of creating and inoculating the biochar is in your process. Like which part is the most difficult for your farm?
I think it's getting over the idea that, you know, something like this can really help. I think once you get over that, and the other thing is, there's a lot of information out that tells you that you need these very technical machines and you need to buy it from them, and it's very expensive. I think if you get over that second stage, we did invent some barrel with David Sundberg, which he's starting to manufacture small backyard 55-gallon drums that that I invented, and then they're not using it because it's really cost effective. So I think manufacturing, I would say, is understanding that and learning how to do that, you know, pyrolyzing it. Once you do that, and that's one thing that Joyce, you want to share a little bit of your perspective on it? You got to hear this.
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm sure what angle you're wanting me to go
how come
in.
it took you so long to understand what I was talking about?
Oh, because I struggle with it because the first machine we got was so technical. It's like, why do I want to take all this time to learn this technical machine, you know, and it takes all this time? And so I'd watch him, and I'd listen to him. But when he designed this little 55-gallon barrel, and then around the same time he got Kelpie Wilson's Ring of Fire that you saw there, and I just saw how easy it was to take these waste materials, whether it was for us, it's a lot of dead bark, beetle bark trees, and make biochar out of it, and how easily it did it. And then to learn and start applying it and
There
stuff.
you
And so I
go.
think,
There it is. Yep.
yeah, those are the 55-gallon barrels. And so to really start engaging in something that's really simple and that you can do in your own backyard was my feat to get over. And then the next thing is, how do you get it in? And then when we saw the results, so you take it one step at a time, but right there's where you got to start. It's just doing it.
You see them taking the oxygen out and then pyrolyzing it. You can douse it with water at that certain time where the charcoal or the materials kind of glows red and the smoke is gone.
And we only did this for like maybe a half hour, and they got that much. It wasn't very long.
Yeah.
The one thing too with the biochar, it pulls in the moisture, and those microbes love a consistent moist place to live. And so the microbes are just drawn in there for so many reasons, including the cations and everything else. And when we went to the microscope and we looked under the microscope, we were finding a bit much better ratio of fungi to bacteria in the garden soil that had the biochar compared to the one that didn't.
And we have so much compost here that we put in pens. I think I heard some folks talking about, the food waste and things like that. We did some work there in Albuquerque with people using food waste, and the smell was horrendous because it was kind of going anaerobic. And I think the use of biochar will help them break down a lot faster and reduce the smell.
Great. I want to just follow up on some of the pictures you share were in the book, and Josh was putting a link to that in the chat. And Josh, do you want to explain what book that is?
Oh, sorry, that's Kelpie's new book that just came out.
It's a very good book. She's got some other ones, but the best way to learn about biochar is just to do it. And hopefully we can get some more workshops going that can demonstrate how to manufacture that. And there are companies that are now starting to pick up the one in what's the name of that guy down in Springerville, Joyce?
It's an Eager, Arizona Timber and Lumber.
Yeah. And they sell them by the tote bags. And if I can't manufacture enough of it, I'll go down and pick up a couple bags. And it's pretty good stuff. But he's really concerned. Oh, how would you say? He really wants to connect the compost with the biochar, which he hasn't done. He just creates the biochar, but he doesn't know, the use in composting.
We are working with David Sundberg from Santa Fe Institute to get biochar up there. So, I don't know, Isabel, if people really want it, maybe to just connect with you to go through David, because we can see if we can get stuff like that up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the pictures I shared were from a field day that we all did together with the Santa Fe Farmers Market in this institute. And so we did see the Ring of Fire in action, which is the double-walled, larger, technology that Kelpie really, I think, pioneered, invented. And then David Sundberg from the Santa Fe Farmers Market Institute had built some barrels, I think, under your guidance, James, that are just much more home scale, low cost, no cost. And so we have a little manual for that. Someone is interested.
Yeah.
So that was really, really cool to do a field day on that. A little harrowing because it is fire and it gets, it's the ring of fire. At some point, the flame gets really big, but then it dies down pretty quickly. So yeah, happy to do that again. Would be really important. We want to do it with in a forest setting to do something better with slash. That would be very, very interesting. Maybe in the winter and then squelch it with snow, for example. That's a goal for the winter field days.
I just want to continue to emphasize that Indigenous people have been using this, and that's really missing in the discussion with the biochar institutes, is that they're not acknowledging the population density here in the New World, and we're headed towards that in cities. Is that we need to start using biochar in our agricultural system to help sustain the load-bearing capacity in the cities. And so these are going to be more discussions. And also because of the production oriented, being on grocery grids and all that, it's really hitting the whole science, reductionist science is hitting a wall. And this wall is, what else are they going to bring to agriculture except more inputs? Instead, we should be talking about the process of agriculture. So these are some things that I'm really pushing back on to help people understand. And some of them are racing to make big bucks out of it, and when it should be for the community. And that was some of my discussion with Kelpie, is that she was very happy to help us, because we're not talking about manufacturing, making a lot of money off of this. We were talking about how it's going to impact our community. And that's something that I want to continue to emphasize, the process of biochar, that we don't commoditize it. And that's what's going to be the discussion of how we commoditize the heat that's generated. And so we're looking at stoves for low income, houses, how to heat the house, different things like that. And there's some wonderful inventors that have already stepped into it, along with James Skeet and David Sundberg getting on some of this stuff. That guy's an engineer and inventor, so I'm surprised he's not on the meeting. He could have shared a little bit of that. So I'm sure there's more people that are looking at that. And I think in New Mexico, if we want to move away from colonization, we have to really become, imitating nature is really a microbial connections, this whole fungal connections, that we need to share our resources, share our ideas, and really move into sort of a future food sustainability, as well as regenerating the soils that have been contaminated or have been desertified. And this is really the process that once you get on this understanding of biochar, you can really begin to apply. And remember, this is 1,000 years you're heading towards, So I'm really excited about the potential of what our land is going to be like. It's very robust now. It's a lot of growth here, and how sustainable it's going to be in the future.
Thank you, James. I really appreciate your bringing in the Indigenous perspective on this, and I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Come on, you guys. You guys are biochar. Get on board.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Oh, go ahead, John.
No, I was just thanking him. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. What kind of application rate did you use in the fields where you were growing, your cover crops and your feed crops of biochar?
We're still in the process of researching that, and there's needs to be a lot more research in regards to large scale application. And I want to work with conservation folks that, and that's one of the reasons why I showed the firing of kelpies, is that you can do a larger scale, build up biochar burn up a lot of the biomass that's getting in the way, and then getting it out. I'm starting to use a seeder, and I'm using pelletized wood that I have biocharred, and so it runs through my seeder really well when I get it out on a larger scale. This year's the going to be the first year that we're going to get it on a larger scale. We've been doing it on raised beds and a smaller scale gardening, and that's going to be the future of how we get biochar out on a larger level and seeing the research of what it does in the fields. The only way that we're really doing it right now is feeding our cattle as we do paddocks, feeding the cows biochar and then letting them get the biochar out there as it goes through their system. It charges
Oh.
them. Yeah.
Creative. Plus, you get the animal on the ground to help incorporate the biochar along with the dung.
Yes.
Nice idea. Huh?
Yeah. It's amazing the health of our animals because we're feeding them biochar.
Mhm.
We've been feeding them fermented grains and things like that, but when you added the char, you could see just a little switch in them, that's getting turned on to where we don't have to inoculate them with antibiotics or any kind of the synthetic medications that we're so accustomed to. It's all natural. It's all the use of animals in a way that they work with you and you're working with nature.
Just to
James,
clarify,
when you go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just
No.
wanted to clarify that you said you used wood pellets. You did a biochar process on pelletized wood.
Yes, yes. And you can do that. That's how I started with this machine that I'm heating it up, the broiler, and I've got a tank and my Pexis is running through the greenhouse. So I'm not only heating the greenhouse, but I'm also making pelletized biochar.
Cool. Okay. Interesting. Over to John.
So, James, when you add the biochar to the food for your animals, is it has it become a powder, or is it very very small?
Yeah, we have a couple different kinds of biochar. One, I was talking about the pellets.
Yeah.
They're still in that pellet form. You can actually biochar a piece of paper, crunch it up, or make an airplane, and it'll keep its structure. That carbon structure is very, very strong. So one of the things that we do is we definitely grind it up and add it to maybe a cup of their meal, and I use biochar myself too when I have an upset stomach. I just take char pills or whatever you call them.
Mm.
You can actually take when you have a campfire and you have that charred wood left over, especially if you throw water over it. You can even take that, just scrape that off, whatever, and that you can use that as biochar as well. You don't want to use the ash. You want it when it's in that form yet of of what you just burnt.
Well, thanks, guys. I have to log off myself. It's been very informative. Incredible. CJ's here, and I'm just looking at you, CJ, to see if we want to maybe try biochar at Candelaria Nature Preserve at some point, as a soil, to get our wildlife crops fired up.
Yes.
Yeah, CJ,
I think that would be cool.
yeah, I just want to make a comment on that because I think that the next level is we done with gardeners, we've done with ranchers. I think that conservation on a larger scale, you guys need to be a part of that discussion and information of how to get char, because that's really how indigenous people did. They burn certain things on the ground didn't created the biomass, which brings a lot of the animals back in, the grasses back in, and it holds the water in our soil. The way we've been doing management in the forestry is backwards. And we're seeing the results of that, you know, these half water cycles that's creating this huge fires, you know. And I do think we have an opportunity to pivot and turn from that way in which we've done forestry into more modern day conservationist approach by using nature rather than nature working against us.
Well
Amen
said,
to
Jim.
that. Absolutely.
And on that,
Yeah.
adios, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, we are at the hour, so thanks, Steve, for joining. If you have to run. Want to thank James and Joyce really for joining us today and enlightening us with their presentation. I think everybody's impressed. I see some clapping going on. That's awesome. I want to just kind of say here that our next meeting is in October, October 10, I think, October 7 at 3 p.m. I haven't sent around a note yet, not to confuse people, but we will talk about community co-op, composting co-ops, and you know, the ones that we piloted here in the state and how they're doing. So this will be a little bit of a session for folks who have a community compost co-op or those who want to start one, to see how we can support each other in the future. So that will be in October. And then in November, I'm thinking of, well, I'm talking with someone from Pumpkins for Pigs, which is a organization that connects source material for composting, including pumpkins that have gone bad, to farms and ranches, basically folks who could use this materials. And so this is an online map, but also a little bit more than that. And I would really love for New Mexico to be on that map. There is nobody right now on their map, so we want to change that. And then also in preparation for the holidays to, you know, to really have for the opportunity for people to drop off their pumpkins and then some, right? So that we'll talk about that in November, so that we're ready for the holidays with some solutions. Okay, so that's the plan. So look in your inbox for the next announcements, and thank you to everyone for joining today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really wonderful. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.